So, today we're going to dive into a figure who stood right at this massive crossroads in modern history, Pope Paul VI. I mean, think about it. He was a revolutionary who then made one of the most traditional decisions imaginable. He was a global peacemaker who ended up feeling completely powerless when tragedy struck close to home. It's a fascinating story. So let's unpack the man they call the Pope of Contradictions.
You know, this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly sets the stage for the paradox that was Paul VI's 15-year papacy. On one hand, you've got this guy who somehow held the Catholic Church together during just an insane amount of upheaval. But on the other hand, some of his choices, or maybe even his hesitation, left a lot of people feeling kind of let down, disillusioned. So the big question is, how does one person end up with such a split legacy?
Okay, so to really get a handle on Paul VI, you gotta start with the revolution he inherited. He didn't light the match, so to speak, but boy, was he the one left to manage the fire.
So, let's picture this. The year is 1963. Giovanni Battista Montini gets elected pope, and pretty much the entire Catholic world is holding its breath. Why? Because his predecessor, the super popular Pope John XXIII, had kicked off this huge meeting, the Second Vatican Council, or Vatican II, to basically throw open the church's windows and let in some fresh air from the modern world. But John died before it was finished, so Paul VI's first move? It was a massive signal. He said, the revolution continues. He called all the bishops right back to Rome to finish what they started.
And wow, under his leadership, the changes were just sweeping. I mean, just think about this for a second. For centuries, Mass was pretty much always in Latin. Then boom, 1964, he gives the green light for local languages, the vernacular. That was absolutely monumental. A year later, in 65, he sets up the Synod of Bishops. This was a whole new structure to let bishops from all over the world actually advise the Pope. He was trying to make the Church's leadership more of a team effort, more collegial. This guy was literally reshaping the Church in real time.
And he didn't stop there. Paul VI completely shattered that old image of the Pope as a prisoner of the Vatican. He was the first Pope ever to get on an airplane. That's how he got the nickname the Pilgrim Pope. He went everywhere, 6 continents, visiting places like India, Colombia, Uganda. This was a huge deal. He was intentionally turning this historically very European church into a truly global one. He wanted to get out there and meet the world, and he wanted the world to see a new face of the church.
Now, this is a moment. To really grasp how huge this was, you've got to rewind all the way back to 1054. That's when the Eastern Orthodox and Western Catholic churches had their big split, the Great Schism. And for more than 900 years after that, pretty much radio silence, nothing. Then you get this incredible scene in Jerusalem in 1964. Paul VI meets and embraces Patriarch Athenagoras, a single hug that started to heal a wound that was almost 1,000 years old. It was just a breathtaking symbol of his vision for a more modern, unified church.
But, you know, for all these amazing forward-thinking reforms we've been talking about, one single issue and one single document would end up defining his entire papacy. And this is what creates that central contradiction we keep coming back to.
Right, so you have to put yourself in the moment. It's the swinging 60s. The sexual revolution is in full gear, and there's this brand new invention that's changing everything, the birth control pill. Well, this put an incredible amount of pressure on the church. I mean, with all the other changes happening with Vatican II, a lot of Catholics, including a special commission of his own experts, fully expected that the church's teaching on contraception was about to change too.
And this, right here, is where the whole story takes a very dramatic turn. See, Paul VI had put together a commission, bishops, theologians, lay experts, the whole shebang, to study this exact issue. They worked for years, and in the end, the huge majority came back and recommended that the church should change its teaching and allow artificial contraception. But Paul VI, well, he made what must have been an absolutely agonizing, solitary decision. He went against his own hand-picked experts.
So you're probably asking, what was his reasoning? Well, he laid it all out in a 1968 encyclical called Humanae Vitae, which means of human life. His argument was that the two core purposes of marriage, the loving, connecting part, and the procreative, or being open to life part, are completely inseparable. You just can't pull them apart. And to artificially separate them, he believed, was to go against the natural order of things, against natural law. The reaction? It was immediate, and it was explosive, a total firestorm. For so many people, this felt like a huge betrayal of that open, modernizing spirit of Vatican II. The decision just sparked this massive wave of public dissent from theologians, priests, regular Catholics, and it created this deep, deep divide between what the Church officially taught and what millions of its members actually did. Honestly, it's a rift that, in many ways, has never really healed.
So let's pivot to another one of these key contradictions that defined his life. You have this man who's a powerful global peacemaker, right? But that image stands in such stark contrast to his total powerlessness during this moment of just intense personal and national tragedy.
Yeah, on the world stage, Paul VI was a total pragmatist. He pushed for this policy called Ostpolitik, and what that was, basically, was this quiet, patient, diplomatic engagement with the communist governments in Eastern Europe. Now, it was controversial for sure, but his goal was pretty simple. He wanted to improve conditions for Christians living behind the Iron Curtain. He was willing to talk to just about anyone if it meant protecting his people. And nothing shows his global stature better than this. He was the very first pope to ever address the United Nations, and he used that massive platform to deliver what is truly one of the most powerful pleas for peace of the entire 20th century. I mean, think about it. At the absolute height of the Cold War and the Vietnam War, his voice just rings out, demanding an end to conflict.
But then, as his time as Pope was nearing its end, all that global influence just collided head-on with this absolutely devastating personal crisis. In March of 1978, his lifelong friend, the former Prime Minister of Italy, Aldo Moro, was kidnapped by a terrorist group. For 55 days, agonizing days, all of Italy and the Pope were just held in suspense. The man who could speak to the entire world was now facing a crisis right in his own backyard, and it was deeply personal.
And he did something that was just unheard of for a modern pope. He dropped all the formal papal language, and he wrote a personal, handwritten letter directly to the terrorists, the men of the Red Brigades. And in it, he begged them, on my knees, for his friend's life. It was just this raw, achingly human plea from a man who suddenly seemed stripped of all his power. But his plea was ignored. Aldo Moro was murdered, his body found in the trunk of a car in Rome. And everyone close to Paul VI said he was just never the same after that. He was completely consumed by grief that he just couldn't shake. And only 3 months later, he himself passed away. So the question becomes, how does the Catholic Church even begin to reconcile a figure this complex, this full of contradictions? Well, the answer came decades later, and it came through the very formal process of making someone a saint, canonization.
You know, the path to sainthood isn't quick. It's a really long and careful process. For Paul VI, it all started back in 1993. Then in 2012, he was named Venerable, which is the Church's way of saying he lived a life of heroic virtue. A couple years later, after a first miracle was approved, he was beatified. And then finally, with a second miracle confirmed, Pope Francis officially declared him a saint in 2018. It was the Church's final word, officially saying that despite all the controversies, despite all the contradictions, his life was a true model of holiness. And so that leaves us right back where we started, with the big question. How will history ultimately remember Pope Paul VI? Was he the bold reformer who threw open the windows of the Church and started healing ancient wounds? Was he the unwavering traditionalist whose one decision on contraception defined an entire generation? Or was he the suffering servant, a man of incredible faith who just buckled under the weight of his office and his own personal grief? You know, maybe the only real answer is that he was all of those things, all at once.